Good afternoon, everybody. This is a roaming prepper, and today is October 16th, 2021. First and foremost, I hope everyone's having a good weekend. Again, my apologies for not holding a live this weekend. It's been crazy busy, which I guess is a good thing. And I'm trying to catch up on some personal stuff because the week was not suitable to do that. In any case, I hope everyone's doing well. And this week, my Saturday Sitrep is going to take on a different tone. We're going to take a dive into one of the problems facing us today. What I'd like to do is we're going to look at the problem itself. We're going to discuss how it manifested itself, where it came from, what it involves. Then we're going to dig into why it occurred or why people think it occurred. We're going to discuss it a little bit. We're going to go into some details as to what happened both in the US and overseas, if it's applicable. And then we're going to go call to action kind of thing. We're going to then walk into how do we move forward, and what steps can you take individually to make a difference and to mitigate or manage the situation. Okay, there's no point in talking about there's a shortage, or there's supply chain, or there's energy crunch, etc. And you walk away with this scary thing out there in the boonies, but there's no action plan. You don't know what you can do about it. Um, that's just not the way I was trained professionally, and it's just not my approach to life. So um, I'm going to walk you through my thought process on some of this, and we're actually going to talk about something very specific, something I've been involved with pretty much my entire professional career: the energy crunch. That's the problem. Right now, I've had lunch and dinner with professional colleagues who are involved in the oil and gas industry, but as well as I have friends who are affiliated with solar, the wind farms, the energy sector. Energy is a business, so many companies understand this in one shape or form. And right now, to be honest, the world probably needs all of the above energy until we find something that we can say that solved the problem. We may always have some hybrid solution set. But what I'm hearing going into the next quarter, we all thought in the various energy sectors that, you'd have that little spike as activity went up and it kind of outran supply, which we did. And then we figured everything would start to level off, the inflation would hit a little bit, kind of make it a little expensive, and then everything would just kind of flatten out. And we would just be on a plateau for a couple of years until something else, happened to move the market. And that's not what happened. It flattened out briefly, and then all of a sudden there was a crunch. There wasn't enough. There are various reasons why that may be the case, but what I want to do is I'm going to go into a couple of reasons why, or what the problem is, basically what has happened here. So, but that's not the article I wanted. There we go. So let me expand that for you guys. Why is everybody talking about a global power shortage? This is a great article from Bloomberg. The link should be visible on top. If not, Bloomberg.com. You could Google it or just go directly to Bloomberg. This is one of their public articles. They do have articles for their subscribers only. This one's a public one. The way they summarize it, there's a worrying shortage of energy from Europe to Asia caused by supply restraints from the world's top producers. And it's poised to shutter factories and boost power bills. And they reiterate what I already mentioned. There's no single reason. It's a combination of customer demand, right? Consumer demand, government demand, a lot of flying, everything started moving again. But there's also been a lack of investment. Plus, during the contagion, when the market crashed, people got laid off. Well, now that the energy sectors, the various energy sectors, are trying to spin back up, they're running into the same problem everyone else is. A lot of people aren't coming back to work. Some were oversupplied with stimulus money and they don't want to come back to work. And it actually, in some cases, made no sense for them to come back because they're making less. busting their butt than they were at home. But that's gone away now. But we're still not seeing the return. And part of the problem, my suspicion, people found other ways to make a living. A guy in the oil field, he got laid off and he became a truck driver or something like that. The gal who was monitoring the power station, she gets laid off and winds up working electronic systems in the hospital. A lot less stress. You're not outdoors getting rained on and getting chased by javelinas. Why would you want to go back? So it's a very complex mix. On top of that, we have geopolitics. We have a lot of countries are puffed up with each other. Now they're using oil and gas to kind of whack each other on the head. You also have a push toward green energy. Now, I'm all about the climate. I believe in stewardship. But what you're seeing is you're seeing governments implementing climate change policies, but they're not factoring in how to make up that lost kilowatt hour, that lost joules, or whatever your measure of energy is in that particular sector. They didn't figure out how to make up that energy. And what winds up happening is you wind up with a lack of energy, and it's a self-created one. Furthermore, if you reduce your demand, you go to a supplier and you say, I don't want 5 million units of natural gas, I only want 1 million. Well, these guys are stuck with 4 million units of natural gas. They're going to find another buyer. It's the same thing with the damn chip shortage. All the car companies went, we don't need chips. We're halting production. No one's buying new cars. Well, the manufacturer of all this silicone-based science were kind of looking around, and all of a sudden there was this big demand for home electronics because everyone was working from the house. Those chips and that supply went to other sectors. And now the automobile industry is looking for those chips. Guess what? Commitments were made. They don't have them anymore. Sucks to suck. Same thing happened in the energy. So their take on it is the crisis has forced some fertilizer producers in Europe to reduce output, while Chinese power grids are rationing supplies to factories, which will curb production. What's worrying is that it's not even cold yet. Good point, guys. And they're valid here. Now, that picture is a solar farm. And out here in my little world of Texas, I drove the other day past a massive solar farm that literally went to the horizon from my vantage point. At the same time, on the horizon, which was a mesa, were a bunch of windmills. And then we had the oil and gas pump jacks and derricks and pumping facilities all around me. So it's a really interesting hybridization of energy we have here in my state. California is very similar to the same way. So by the numbers, according to Bloomberg, 1,300% surge in benchmark natural gas futures since May. It's not going to get better as we hit the cold seasons, and we're expecting a cold winter, not just by the Farmer's Almanac, which predicted the last 2 winters, but meteorologists across the board are saying we're seeing it. This is what's happening. In 2017, seasonal coal inventories, that's, I don't know why it's all discombobulated there. However, China coal inventories are very low because they're trying to get away from coal. They have a massive problem with pollution, largely because they never modernized to solar, nuclear, natural gas, oil. They use coal, which they had a boatload of, and Beijing looks like an ashtray. So now their people are having illness. Who knows if freaking Rona was a smoke-induced crap? I don't know. Anyway, they're trying to clean their air, which is a smart thing, but they cut back on coal, didn't substitute it with anything else, and now they were thinking, well, we can use more coal, but it's not mined. It's still in the earth. So they've pinched themselves. In a worst-case scenario, Europe could face blackouts, and China industrial users, including chip makers and aluminum smelters, may shut factories. The economies that can't afford the fuel, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and in some states, in some sections of India, which are also big trading partners to the Europeans and to the Americans, will also grind to a halt. So you see how this is cascading. So we have multiple problems in not just the supply chain, because of logistics and stupidity of managing vessels, etc., and of course geopolitics. But now this is going to add to it. You turn off the power plant, you take off the power to a factory that is producing something needed here in the States. Well, now the factory's producing less. There'll be less on the boat. The boat's already going to be delayed in the first place. And what you're going to get on this end will be less of what you wanted, later than you wanted it, probably at a higher cost than you expected. They all roll together. And of course, Russia offers to ease Europe's gas prices with strings attached. And here's the other side of it. You have geopolitics. Russia, OPEC, Venezuela, Iran. A lot of these countries don't like us. They don't like the Europeans. Saudis don't like the Russians. The Russians don't like the Israelis. Everyone's puffed up, and they're leveraging fuels and energy as a way to negotiate. Now, the UK decided to set an energy price cap, but so that way it doesn't blow off the scales. But in order to make it manageable for the companies and for the infrastructure they need, they capped it at 30%, which means the UK, one, they'll have a limited power shortage or power cost increase, but two, it's going to be 30%, which really sucks. So this is that's their take on that. But again, that's the start. So we have all these things all rolling together, and so what's happening with that? Well, now what's happening is you're going to wind up with less fuel, reduction in power consumption, which means factories will be slower to get the product you need in the quantities you need it. It's just going to feed into the supply chain. So, and we're gonna discuss how to react to this stuff in a little bit. But excuse me, here's another one. If the article will move, and let's do a little analysis here. So this is Forbes, and again, I try to be apolitical. Actually, Forbes is just Forbes. They like money. We all know the Forbes corporation is all about dollars. So they pay all the politicians. So I guess the good thing is these guys, they're honest about their greed. So at least we know where we stand. Europe's energy crisis underscores the dangers of the proposed clean electricity performance plan. Again, this is Forbes.com. So if you want to search it, I got it through MSN through a link. You could go directly to Forbes. Also, one of their public articles, I believe, unless it kicks me out here shortly. Some are for subscriptions only, but this one was public. So go check it out. If I can get the screen to move, we can scroll down and, well, that sucks a bit. Hold on a second here. We're having technical difficulties because Forbes is being a jerk. Let's try that again. And it's okay. We'll go to another Bloomberg article while Forbes decides if it wants to be seen. Okay, so, oh no, yep, this is the one I wanted. So this was from October 14th, just this Thursday. Your evening briefing: energy crisis increasingly includes oil. The energy crisis keeps getting worse. Shortages of natural gas in Europe and Asia are boosting demand for oil, deepening what was already a sizable supply deficit in crude markets. An acute shortage of natural gas, LNG, and coal stemming from the gathering global economic recovery has sparked precipitous run-up in prices for energy supply. So think about it. The market went down during COVID. It went to the bottom, kind of crashed, and production, everything came with it. The increase was faster than the suppliers were expecting. At the same time, certain countries were trying to implement green policies in a recessed market. But again, as I mentioned before, they didn't account for, well, how are we going to fill that gap if we reduce this much or energy from 20% coal to 5% coal? How are you going to make up the other 15%? What medium are you going to use? They didn't think that far ahead. This is what happens. Also linked, so a few other things. They said the economic recovery has sparked a precipitous run-up in prices for energy supplies and is triggering a massive switch to oil products. So now the countries that were trying to implement green policies are forced to go back to oil because, for crying out loud, they can't even provide the basic electricities, and they're eventually it's going to cause rolling blackouts. So they have to choose between being green and people suffering, which is not going to be popular because most people are pissed at the at their government right now anyway. Let me see if I can get that other article expanded up a bit. Oh, here we go. Okay, going back to the Forbes.com article. See, in theory, we're going back to the Forbes article. And an advertisement. These things piss me off. How do I make that go away? Okay, there we go. If Washington policymakers want to see what happens when you push renewable energy mandates too far, too fast, they only need to read the news stories coming out of Europe. Last month, the Associated Press reported that the European Trade Union Confederation, which represents 45 million members, said that 15% of the EU's working poor, the equivalent of 2.7 million people, lacks enough money to turn on their heating this winter when it comes. Think about that for a second, gang. Because of a mismanagement on the part of the government, they're saying we want to help the poor, we want to help the working class. They just screwed the working class in Europe. Okay, the millionaires, the politicians, the people who aren't working paycheck to paycheck, they're the ones who can probably, and it's going to hurt all of them. Don't kid yourself. Unless they're millionaires and billionaires, everybody, the working professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, are all going to hurt. But the specialty folks have a little bit of a buffer there. The working class folks do not. And if their electrical bills are going to go from $100 a month to $200 or $300 or $400, that's not good. That's bad stuff. The cost of electricity is still a staggering 6 times more expensive than it was a year ago in Spain. 6 times more. So take your electrical bill, multiply it by 6, and then try and squeeze that into your monthly budget. You can see where the problem is. Yesterday, Reuters reported soaring European wholesale gas prices are encouraging more utilities to switch to carbon-heavy coal to generate electricity, just as the region tries to wean off the polluting fuel. This is a case of too smart for their own good. I'm an energy sector guy, but energy is energy. Like I said, all of the above. But you can't be stupid. The market's depressed. You don't have enough capacity in the clean energy. You can't just take it away abruptly with no plan to substitute it, unless you're trying to crater your own country, but that's just going to cause revolts. So that, I don't know. And that can go down a whole rabbit trail of conspiracy, but we won't touch that. So they put, indeed, energy poverty, soaring energy prices, industrial shutdowns, and a surge in coal use are the obvious results of Europe's rush to embrace renewables without considering how that rush would affect affordability, resiliency, reliability, and cost. They got it right there. So the news reports also, again, you see how this pattern here, friends. You're watching an entire sections, entire nations, and trading blocks all doing the same thing. Now, if it was a booming economy, there was no contagion, there were no shutdowns, there was no, recession, and people just wanted to start cleaning up the air. Great, that's a great time to do it. You have money to invest in alternative fuels, you have money to bring talent in, you have people ready to work. Now's not the time to do this. This was arrogance and stupidity. It's not that the idea is bad, it's the implementation, and the timing is horrible. But at the end of the day, the people making those decisions, they're not the ones who are going to suffer. As you saw, 3 million European working class folks who are working probably paycheck to paycheck, like a lot of Americans do, are the ones who are going to suffer because of this nonsense. So, oh man, they took away my the article I wanted to show you, and they said this is a subscription article. So, like I said, some are subscription only. So, another article for you though. So you kind of see, you understand what happened in Europe. That can happen here. Now, fortunately, we have enough people in both parties in states that have different footprints of energy who are going, wait a minute, you're going to unemploy a bunch of my people. One, and two, look what's happening in Europe. So maybe it's good that their stupidity happened before our stupidity. Whether it will prevent us from being stupid, that's another question, but I digress. So we'll go to the next one. The energy market is a huge mess right now and threatens to turn the high inflation of 2021 into a terrible new economic error. Now, here we go again. When you're making these decisions, you don't factor in, it has a cascading effect or a butterfly effect to some people, ripple, however you want your analogy. The increase in fuel costs is going to go into manufacturing, farm products, it's going to go into a lot of stuff. And it's going to fall onto an already tenuous supply chain and the inflationary problem we have. The world is stuck in a dire energy crunch. It's affecting everything from gas prices to shipping times. Countries are struggling to source coal, natural gas, oil, and renewable energy as supply chain problems linger. The crunch is already driving energy costs higher and threatens to keep inflation. Excuse me again. If you're paying $3.29 per gallon to fill your car when it costs $2.29 at the start of the year, oh no, it says, for example, you're probably paying $3.29 per gallon to fill your car when it was only $2.29 at the beginning of 2021. And that's in their area, whoever the writer is. Your online orders are arriving way later than usual. And yes, if you notice, Amazon Prime is no longer 2-day guaranteed. This is when you get it, but we're not going to charge you for it, but you'll get it when you get it. Because what Amazon's doing, they're trying to keep the commitment for free shipping, but not lose their ass at the same time. So they're combining shipments, but you're not guaranteed 2 days anymore. Go look back at your Amazon Prime orders 3 years ago versus now. There's no more 48-hour arrival. The complex web that powers the world is badly tangled. Combination of supply chain bottlenecks, government policies, and ill preparedness has left countries struggling to keep their economies running at full steam. Now think about that for a second. Supply chain bottlenecks could be, a boat stuck in the Suez, a tornado, a hurricane in a dock, a Rona outbreak in some city. You may or may not be able to control supply chain. Government policies and ill preparedness should well be within the control of human leadership. So I call incompetence on this. This is bullshit. And again, I try not to get snarky on, but this is hurting friends of mine who live overseas and they're paying by the liter, and their gallon equivalent would be like $7 a gallon. And I'm like, holy crap, no wonder you drive nubs. That's why you all bike everywhere. That makes sense too. This is completely avoidable. The energy shortage could erase a key recovery driver. The holiday season tends to bring a wave of consumer spending as people shop for holiday gifts. Consumer spending counts for roughly 70% of economic activity, but only when there are goods to spend on. China lacks an adequate supply of coal now due to slowed mining and a refusal to import coal from Australia. So again, Australia and China got into it with each other. China has their own coal mines, but they shut them down to be green, and now they're energy rationing, and it's going to go down the supply chain. The crunch doesn't stop there. Frackers in the U.S. haven't returned to pre-crisis output, leaving oil supply well below demand. OPEC is not increasing. Russia has worsened the problem by deciding not to send natural gas to certain parts of the EU, which I think since this article they've tried to resolve. So it's bringing in, but there's also in short supply. OPEC is sticking with the production increases it's scheduled before the crunch, telling the rest of the world that they aren't coming to the rescue. They had a scheduled increase, and keep in mind now OPEC's, I'm sure, doing this to inflate pricing a little bit, but they also know if they crash the economy, no one's buying oil, and they get hurt on the other side. So it's kind of a balancing game. But when you have oil and gas in the earth in a formation that has been fracked or perforated and it's flowing out, shutting it off, turning it on, shutting it off, turning it on will cause a problem. It'll actually cause collapse inside the formation. It causes all sorts of nonsense. So if they're going to increase or decrease, it has to be done gradually and it has to be done systemically. So even if OPEC wanted to come to the rescue, it could take a month to 2 months for them to ramp up to where they're making up that difference. And it still doesn't address the lack of coal, because you can't put oil in a coal-fired plant in China. You need the coal, and they don't have any. So as I said, a lot of this is going, and again, this is also going to feed into the inflation. So we already have inflation, right? Everyone's seeing it. We're seeing prices go up. We printed too much money. The problem is, one thing that alleviates inflation is the velocity of money. I'm no economist, but I do know when you're spending, when money is being spent and it's changing hands, that's called the velocity of money. It's moving around. That means products are being sold. That means commercial endeavors are moving. The wheels are turning. And as the wheels turn, it decreases the inflationary effect. And then the Fed, what they do, they move an interest rate here, they move an interest rate there to kind of take a little bit of the currency out of the system. And it kind of levels everything out. But now you can't do that. If anything, you've made it worse. You can't print more money. That's just gonna make each dollar worth less. And GDP is dependent on, or I'm sorry, the value of your money is dependent on the velocity of the money and the GDP of the nation. And if both are depressed, and then like China and the US have reduced GDP because of energy reduction or energy costs, that's just making it worse. You're just throwing more logs on the fire. Now these knuckleheads, this is the Guardian, and actually the Guardian's not a terrible news source. I just think this particular writer is a pelican for some of the things they put. Or maybe it's not, or maybe I'm reading it wrong. Energy crisis reignites demand for oil and poses a threat to climate targets. And obviously, like we discussed before, Paris Space Agency warned that this would hike costs for energy-hungry industries, which, along with power outages, could lead to lower industrial activity and a slowdown in the world's economic recovery from COVID-19. Record coal and gas prices, as well as, and they kind of reiterate what the other folks say. In China, the producer price index, which reflects the price factories charge wholesalers, rose by almost 11% in this September, last month. China's factory gate inflation stands at 26-year high after a months-long global commodity rally. The world's second largest economy has dealt a double blow by soaring commodity prices and rolling blackouts across 20 of its 31 provinces. So this is hitting everyone on the head, right? And as they mentioned, Forbes mentioned in their article, there's no reason. It was political mismanagement, bad timing. But the wheels have been moved. Things have occurred. China chose not to mine coal over the last year the way it should have, so it had no reserve. Okay, you can't undo that, right? You can mine now, but it's going to take you months to get it to the factories, to the power plants, etc. So We're now suffering from the stupid of leadership in various countries from before. And that's frustrating. So we've gone through the problem, the energy crunch, kind of did an analysis. Why is there a crunch? What happened in Europe? What mistakes did Europe made that we shouldn't try to make? So call to action, guys and girls. What do we do? What do we do as individuals besides sit there and be pissed? Because that's easy to do. I like to get annoyed with stupidity, but then my brain takes over and it's like, okay, how do I challenge this shit? I don't accept the status quo. So how do we mitigate it? Now, yeah, getting your pitchforks and torches is one idea, but there are better ways to do it. And there are things you can do personally to change your footprint, your exposure. So the first thing, the biggest consumer of energy in your life is probably your home, right? So look at your home and see what can you do affordably and reasonably that can help reduce that exposure. So let's see if we can get this. Maybe not. Let's try that again, because apparently it did not want to show. There we go. Ta-da. So this is a energy.gov website. I'll start with the feds, and then we'll work our way into the private sector. So interesting, and I never thought of it this way, but you know all those things you leave plugged around the house, right? The USB charger, the cell phone charger, the night light, the little Scentsy thing that, you know, gives scent to everyone. Well, all of these things are continually draining power, even your laptop plugged in. Now, certain things you should leave on, right? You want to leave medical devices on. You want to have your laptop charge, your cell phones in the morning. But there are other things maybe you can turn off. So that was one of their recommendations, reducing vampire loads. But there are a few things. So appliances and electronics, or especially the appliances, are a big drain. Washing machines, ovens, microwaves, fridges, freezers. Actually, freezers don't pull as much. So their recommendation is, if you have an older model, if you can afford it or you can swing it, get a newer model. Even if it's not the newest model, get an Energy Store model. Even if you get the basic, here's your new fridge. That may make a big difference in what you're doing at home. Also lighting. So we had a house in Houston, was massive, and it had old style lights, and my electric bill the first 3 months there was $500 a month. I said, screw that, this is insane shit. So I re-insulated the windows, and then I switched everything to CFLs, which is what I could find at the time, ultimately going to LEDs. And that electric bill, even in the summer, rarely went over $250. And the only reason it went that high was because the house was old and air conditioning leaked out these ancient windows. Was a pretty house, though, I'll give you that. Learning how to reduce your costs with your lighting, get more efficient appliances, but you know that costs money, so you may have to take a step approach to it. Another thing I've seen, though, I've seen people on Facebook Marketplace or community Facebook pages will say, hey, I'm relocating, I'm moving. It happens here a lot. I'm not bringing this fridge. Well, if you have a clunker of a fridge and they've got a new one and they're selling it for half price, it might be worth the money. Think about it. You spent $300 on that new fridge, but you're saving $50 a month in electricity. You might make that money back within a year or so. Well, no more than that. But anyway, yeah, you'll make your money back in 3 months, 4 months. No, I'm sorry, 6 months. Hashtag math. It's been one of those weeks. God, I can't even do math in my head. Also, electric space heating and cooling. If it gets really cold in the house, or you know, like the Texas freeze we had, one thing we did was we kept the house heater at a moderate level to where we wouldn't get into freezing, like to some dangerous level. But we didn't keep it at 70, 80 degrees because we knew people who were doing that, and they had insane electrical bills. Instead, during the day, we layered up clothes, but at night, we brought everyone, including the puppers, into one room. So we were all in one room, and the heat was not set too high, but because we were all in that room, we were covered up, everybody was kept warmer. So again, something you can do if it gets very cold this winter is your limit your activity to certain rooms, and don't worry if other rooms get cold. Obviously, if someone's in that room, you want to keep it, temperate. But if you can keep it to during the day, your kitchen and maybe your breakfast nook, don't even go to the living room or the other rooms downstairs. And then in the evening, move your space heater from the kitchen to the bedroom and put everything together there. Warning, make sure your space heater is safety rated, so if it gets knocked over, it shuts off. Okay, people are dying from that. And don't be careful with the butane and propane powered heaters. They suck up oxygen. So again, caution with this kind of stuff. I had one friend, what he did, he bought the heating pad that you use when you strain your back, and his wife was cold. Actually, my wife did it too. She bought a heating pad and set it to the lowest setting and just threw it under the blankets by her. It would make me too hot, but she was happy as a bug in a rug. So, little tricks like that. Also, great time to invest in a solar charger. If you can't swing the whole solar generator, you can at least do the solar charger and kind of use that to charge up your stuff. If the sun comes out, put it outside, charge it up, and use that to charge your cell phones and miscellaneous stuff. Take a load off the house. I happen to have a gas water heater that's one of those on-demand heaters, but they also recommend electric water heater. Now, all of this stuff requires time, money, or effort. So again, these are only recommendations. You have to do what's within your budget and your skill set. One other thing that's relatively easy is insulation. If you're working on your home and you have an older home, you may want to consider getting some kind of additional insulation. Even if you put blackout curtains over your windows. So instead of like a normal curtain, get the blackout curtains they use in hotels. The material's a little more expensive. It's way cheaper than a new window. And you replace your curtains with the blackout curtains, and it will cut down on drafts in the windows. You can also put some kind of metal blocker on your fireplace after you're done using it, so it prevents cold air from coming down the fireplace if your soffit doesn't close right. So again, a lot of things you can do to minimize your power usage. Now that obviously doesn't help you with your car. So here are a few more tips, and this is from greenmatch.co.uk. I'll share this with you as well. And so turn off lights, basic things, switch to energy efficient. LED lights make a huge difference, guys, huge difference. Unplug devices if you're not using them. Don't set your fridge or freezer as cold as they are. Don't maximize put your AC too hot. I'm sorry, your heater too hot if it's cold. Instead, put it a little lower than you'd normally do, and then layer up clothes. The clothes don't take any energy. Do larger loads less frequently as opposed to many small loads, so you're not using electricity that way. Wash with a cold temperature. These are things that can save 25, 50, $100 a month. When your cost is going up 25, 50, $100 a month, it'll keep you even keel. If you're lucky, you may come out ahead. Stuff you could do anyway. So also for vehicles, if you have a smaller vehicle in the house, or you can get your hands on one, if you're commuting, use the little cart. If you have to go out in the country or in the field or do some specific work, then take the SUV or your pickup truck. Use a smaller, more efficient vehicle to go to and from. So if you're pondering, do I get another pickup truck? Or you may want to consider getting a smaller vehicle and using that. Some people carpool to work. Saves you a bunch of money because you alternate who goes and drives. And also, you don't get caught in traffic sitting there behind the wheel. You can play on your phone or whatever while the driver brings everyone to work. Also, make use of mass transit if you have it available to you. So These are things you can action now. And again, you have to do them within your budget and within your ability. Most important thing to do at the end of the day, I'm going to close out these windows. I had too many windows going on here. Companies will do the same thing. They'll look for new suppliers of material. They'll find cheaper products, shorten that supply chain. Also, cut back unnecessary things. You don't need to leave the lamp on all night. Turn it off. If you can cook with gas instead of the microwave, you can do that. Maybe your gas bill will go up, but your electric will go down. Play around with it. There are actions you can take to soften the hit of what's coming. And there's no reason for us to suffer. That's why we're in the preparedness community, so that we can see this coming, make a plan, and try to enact the plan so that we don't take those hits. They don't always work. So be open to improvisation, compromise. You may have to just come up with stuff and collaborate. So again, folks, there's things you can do right now and going into the winter to take a little bit of the pinch out of your energy costs. And remember, if you don't have to drive for that meeting, if you're not shut down and you're going to drive to a meeting instead of driving, use Teams. I know you'd like to see your friends, but Teams is a great way, or Zoom, or whatever the hell, Facebook Live, FaceTime, etc. So use those apps, cut down on the driving. There's no reason for you guys to kill yourselves. There are things we can do to mitigate the problem. So take action. Write some ideas down tonight. That's your homework. Write some ideas of how you can save money on energy and on gas, and talk it over with your family and your loved ones and see what you can come up with. Guys, like I said, thank you for your patience. Sorry about no live again. Just super hella busy. Godspeed to those of you who are traveling. If you don't need to travel, use Teams, as I said. And to everyone else, God bless, be safe, and collaborate. Help each other out. You've got this. I'll see you later. Romer out.